Okay. Just waiting for everybody. All the signals are about to come in. Yeah. Boom, 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 boom. Somebody, if you have your mic, oh, I can mute everybody. That's all good. Hi. Hi, Martha.
Hello.
We're just waiting. We're waiting for the computer to let everybody in because there's a lot of people like waiting in the lobby, so to speak. Hi, Marcy.
Hello.
We're just letting everybody's computer catch up.
How is everybody today?
La, la, la. Good. How are you? I'm glad that you guys. Oh, good. Okay, good. All right. So we have some people that are that have their video off, so you're not going to see their names, which is great because that's hopefully how these Zoom meetings work. I'm going to be muting everybody except for our panel of people, and then if you have a question or anything that you would like to ask, then put it in the chat box there. Okay. So let me see if I can get over here to the little thingy. Okay, so welcome to Behind the Veil, episode 3. I'm super excited about this. This has been a great kind of learning experience, especially in the current times. And so the last one that we did on episode 2 weeks ago was did so well, and I was so excited about the fact that we were able to do a panel via Zoom to talk about some of these questions. Was really exciting to me. And I hope everybody can hear me fine, right? Can everybody hear me fine? Just shake your head yes if you can. Yeah? Okay, good. So I should start out like, you know, hello cats and kittens. Is that too much? Yeah, Tiger King. Yeah, too much Tiger King. Anyway, so I've been hardcore about I've been hardcore about Tiger King. I do not know what is wrong with me right now. But I just absolutely adore it. I went through all of it like in 2 days. It was crazy. And by the way, that's not how gay people typically are. That's just not our thing. So just FYI, that we don't all have tigers hanging out in our living rooms and, you know, whatever that trio was. So
I look like everybody else. I was like this and little.
I thought that's why you never invited me for dinner.
All right, so let me introduce the panel. So again, welcome to Behind the Veil. Today we've got Erika Arango with Light Sky Photography. Wave, Erika. Erika is an incredible photographer that is actually fairly new to the local community. She's been doing this for probably a decade, but in the last 3 or 4 years, she's really focused on it and has really harnessed her abilities in beautiful ways. We just actually finished doing, right before all this started, we actually did a photo shoot for the Oceanic restaurant, which is that new venue in Pompano, and it came out beautiful. Your photos were fantastic. So I'm excited that we're going to be able to get to use those photos coming up. But so I just wanted you to introduce yourself and say a little bit about your company.
Hi guys, my name is Erika and I'm the owner of Light Sky Photography. I practically have been doing photography for the past 10 years, and Keith actually was the one who pushed me to go full-time with this. So if it wasn't for Keith, I probably would have been doing this full-time and professionally. So yeah, that's what it is.
Awesome. Excellent. Excellent. Next is I'd like to introduce Nichole Sellars. Nichole is the owner of CLE Events and is kind of my work wife when it comes to things having to do. I feel like we're always doing events together, and that's an amazing time. But Nichole is also incredible with figuring out how to use vintage furniture in ways that make it very new now next. And so Nichole, and you've been on one of these with me before, so I just wanted to say hello and introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about your company.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nichole, and we have Clay Events and Rentals, and we specialize in helping you add that unique touch to whatever your event may be, whether it be a social event like a wedding or baby shower or anniversary party or birthday party to corporate. But one thing we love to do is we love to create themes and really make it personal and about you. So if you and your fiance are super into travel or vintage or whatever, we love to use props and accessories to give it a whole new look. But we also custom create. So if you find that thing on Pinterest that you'd love to have, you know, we'd love to create it for you.
Awesome. Next, I'd like to introduce Jacqueline Morgan with J. Morgan Flowers. Jackie is an incredible florist that I've been working with for, gosh, a lot of years, over a decade for sure. We're not going to go that far, right? Yeah, we're not going to talk about how many years. Anyway, she is kind of a no-nonsense girl, is very straightforward, and I just love her ability to literally pull details out of people that you would not expect that they would have even thought about. So I just love her process, and I thought that she would be a good addition to the Behind the Veil sequence. So, and I'm kind of excited to hear some of your perspectives on some of the things that we're going to be talking about. So Jackie, tell me a little bit about you and about your company.
Okay, so I'm Jacqueline. I'm from London originally. Been here for, oh my gosh, over 20 years now. Started J. Morgan Flowers 16 years ago. And I always say my job is to kind of get inside the bride's head and kind of figure out what she's after and then just take it to the next level. So I would say half my job is like figuring out the bride's personality and then kind of just running with it. And we love it. We get to create one of a kind, unique weddings and bring their visions to life.
Love it. And then finally, I'm going to introduce my assistant, Brooke Logan Stoner. Brooke has been with me for, gosh, a couple years now, and was like jumped on to the wedding industry like nobody's business, and really has brought a fresh perspective to what I do. And obviously, she's going to be able to give you guys like a kind of insider look, not my kind of like insider look, but like, you know, from a realness perspective. So, and Brooke, I just wanted you to talk about yourself a little bit and tell me like why you even got into this. What was it that led you into this industry?
Hi, everyone. My name is Brooke Logan Stoner, and I'm Keith's assistant. Actually, Keith found me via a different company and shoplifted me from that person, and I shortly became his assistant afterwards. So I'm a little newer to the whole, like, actually physically hands-on inside the weddings and stuff. I've attended a million of them and walked down the aisle once myself, but what I love about all this is because I get to ask the questions that anybody would ask that doesn't have like the inside information. And now that I have that knowledge, and I've worked with actually all these wonderful people that are on the panel right now. So I've learned a lot. I think I've contributed some. I have some fresh new ideas, and I just put my spin on things. So I love what I do. I think I have the most amazing boss, and I get excited every time I get my notebook with who my florist is and this and that, and who my photographers are, and I have my top 5 sitting with 4 of my top 5 sitting here. So I'm excited. So thanks for having me.
Yay! So again, welcome to Behind the Veil. So today is we're going to be doing things a little bit differently because normally what we do is I take a bunch of questions from a bunch of the brides that have sent me questions. And by the way, we are recording this, so that way it'll be available on YouTube and on Facebook later after we're done with the show. So you know, it is being recorded, so remember that. Just FYI, you know, because it's forever. Anyway. Well, I have to kind of remember that probably more than anybody else. Anyway, so what we're going to do is, what?
The power's in the editing, darling.
I try not to do too much editing because I really want this to be kind of a straightforward shot and to give people like a real idea of what our lives are like. So we'll start with some questions that came in, and then and each of those questions will then lead up to some of your past weddings and some of the horror stories. I don't want to say horror stories, some insightful stories about like what people have done and how we overcame them and why you should avoid them. Yeah. So I'm gonna actually start with Jacqueline because she just gave me the wide eye because I just saw her when she's like, "What do you mean, Beck? We're gonna talk about people." So I had a bride that said, "Oh, pretty typical. What is and be as broad or as specific as you want." She said, "What would you ask to be the typical price of a centerpiece when looking at budget?"
Okay, so I always look at, rather than narrowing down on per item, what I suggest doing is figuring out your overall budget for flowers. It's just a lot easier. So typically flowers are somewhere between 10 to 20% of the total cost of the wedding, with your food and beverage and venue typically taking 50%. That kind of helps figure out where you are budget wise. But typically like the average centerpiece, like a low one starts at 150 and a tall one starts at 250. But it also depends on the time of year, the types of flowers, the quantity. I mean, we've done weddings where they've spent more on flowers than they have on food. I think the semester hated us that time. And then we've had weddings where there've been a lot less. But I always think if you kind of have an overall budget and you're very open and honest with your florist and say, this is my budget, this is my Pinterest board, this is what my vision is, tell me the biggest way to get the biggest bang for my buck out of my budget. That's honestly the best way.
And then, so talking about like different centerpieces, one of the questions was, what was the most unusual material you've ever used for a centerpiece?
Oh gosh, wow. I mean, there was one where she actually owned a produce company. So we actually filled the entire vase with mini artichokes and aubergines, like mini eggplants, I guess in American, kind of going up.
Really?
And then we had this humongous centerpiece that had like baby kale, which was still on the stem. And then we also had more artichokes and vegetables like inside of it, because they met in the produce business. And that was part of their personality. I mean, they just gave us the produce. So it must have been, I don't know, like $8,000 worth of produce. It was very bizarre, but it was beautiful. It was unique, because you want people to walk into your wedding and go, oh my God, this is so them. Not, oh, this is just like Susan and, Susan's wedding last week. Just to say
right.
You want it to be very individual. And that's why part of my job is to get inside the head to kind of figure out how to make it unique.
I love that. Well, actually, I'm actually going to pull up one of your things that we did.
Oh,
let's see, share screen. So this is one. Oh, can you see it?
Oh yeah, the baby's breath wedding. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was the baby breath wedding. So talking about unusual materials, I always talk about like the fact that people can use something as simple as baby's breath to create something that's really over the top.
Absolutely. I mean, you remember this client, they could have had anything that they wanted. And she just said, I love a baby's breath. And I was like, fabulous. As long as we don't put it next to anything else, it's wonderful. If you put it next to a red rose, it looks like you picked it up at, at the gas station at the corner. So let's just leave it pure baby's breath. And it was beautiful. I mean, we had it everywhere. It was phenomenal. But you also remember, even that's a very reasonable product to use, the amount that you need for each of those centerpieces, I think was like 12 bunches or something crazy. So these are, bunches, so they're huge. So even though it's a cheap material, you're like, oh, it's just baby's breath, it still adds up because of the quantity that you need to use. I also did another wedding where we used just baby's breath, but we sprayed it gold and we did garlands on the table, and it was beautiful, but it was very labor intensive. So, but it was. I think
that's actually something super important to remember, is that a lot of times people say, oh, if we use cheap or inexpensive, I don't want to say cheap, but inexpensive product, does that mean that our price point is going to be a lot less? And a lot of times it's no, because the cost is in the labor of doing it, not in the actual.
Absolutely. It's like the green is very in right now with the Meghan Markle wedding, I call it. Like she totally transformed as far as I'm concerned. And thank God, I love her. I absolutely adore her. But you know, the quantity of green that you need, and it takes so much longer for me to make a bouquet that has greenery, like, you know, cascading out and to the sides, than it does for me to make a round bouquet that's, you know, 2 dozen roses. Because 2 dozen roses I can do with a blindfold on, but to make it this way, it's going to take me twice as long. So a lot of it is just quantity, the type of flowers, but is also you know, the labor and the time that goes into it.
Yeah, that's super important. I think that's really important. So Erika, you're up. And I think we talked a little bit about this before we started, but you know, the major questions that came in with photography was, you know, some basics, like what are the best lightings? What are the best backgrounds? And then what would be a sensible timeline in order to get all of my family photos in? I mean, those are kind of generic, so maybe you can make a little bit more specific.
Yeah, definitely depends on the couple, what you're looking for. So I like to do natural lighting best for photographs. But again, some people want to use, you know, they like the flash and they want to, if they start, for instance, like their wedding later in the day, then it doesn't give us enough time for taking photographs with the natural lighting. So we kind of have to adjust for whatever setting we are. So really, any setting will be good enough. Depends. What will make the photograph really is the couple. If the couple is relaxed.
So looks count?
Huh?
Looks count? Huh? Okay. Is that what you're saying?
But if the couple is relaxed and they're happy and they have a good venue, definitely the venue does help a lot. The photos will come out beautifully, and if the couples are, like, again, they're enjoying themselves and they're not, you know, we're not stressing out with the time, and everything will be okay. Everything's going to be perfect. And as far as the timeline for family, again, it depends how many people are in the family. Some people have maybe 5 to 7 family members attending. Some people have over 30 people attending for the, you know, for the family, and they want photos done. So definitely within like an hour. Normally is done during the cocktail hour. But I always like to do photos prior to the ceremony, so everybody can actually go through the cocktail hour and actually have fun. Because I don't.
So you actually want people to do the first look then? You think that's important?
Look, and then family photos right out of the way. So that way, when the ceremony is done, everything kind of just spreads out a little nicer. Everybody's enjoying themselves. They can have a drink. They can just kind of relax after everything that's happened. So it doesn't become work for the couples, because they do tend to get very stressed when we have to squeeze in family photos, bridal party photos. Then we have photos of them and squeeze them in an hour. They tend to rush, and we don't get those really artistic shots that they will like at the end of the day.
So what? How much time are you saying? So let's say that a ceremony starts at 5 o'clock. How much time should a bride say, if they're going to do a first look? What time should they start? Let's say ceremony starts at 5. Should they be like 3:30 to 4:30? We're doing it, like give you an hour.
First look will be a perfect amount is an hour, and then depending how many people are in the bridal party, that also can be from like 45 minutes to an hour. Because some people the family members always like to roam around. They like to get lost, so we always lose somebody in the family for the photos. So definitely an hour for everybody. I had one wedding that we were rushed. I mean, it was like an 8-hour wedding, but the bridal party alone was 30 people in total. Then we were doing like a sunset
30.
wedding. 30 people. And so you can only imagine getting 15 people on each side to look at me through the entire time, rushing family photos while the sun is leaving. There's no lighting near us. So it was rushing. It became a little bit stressful, but we kind of had to adjust regardless. So we continued the photos during the reception. So definitely 2 hours max for a first look and family photos, just so we're not rushing. So later on, we don't go, did we take this photo? And we're like, no, we didn't have to. So that's a big
so one of the big ones is, and Brooke will remember this, we had a wedding that was at a synagogue, and the photographer went to take pictures, and she's a well-known photographer, and when the flash went off, like clown makeup came through, so all of a sudden they all had white face, happening. Has that happened to you before?
It could happen, especially when you don't have anything like walls to bounce the light off. So that's why I try to push to have something done underneath, like a nice ceiling or like a nice room, so everybody's lit up properly. But if you're in the middle of a field, it could happen. So it could be a technical error. It's had happened to me before, but it can be fixed. It can definitely be fixed in Photoshop.
Oh my goodness. Well, Brooke, remember you had to redo all those people's makeup. Like we had like 6 people that you had to all of a sudden scrape all that old makeup off and redo it because she had used some type of white base. Do you remember that?
I do. That's the transplant from Nashville, wasn't it? The Tennessee? Was it Tennessee?
Yes.
Yep. And they didn't have to be touched up at all night long. They were locked in.
But I mean, she looked great. But that first photo, and we were looking through the viewfinder, and we realized that she looked like a clown. We were like, oh crap, what are we gonna do? Makeup artist had already left, so Brooke was like pulled out of her makeup bag and just started going to town. It was really funny. I was like, oh my God, I thought she was gonna like shoot me because I'm like, hey, can you help us? She's like,
I love it.
Look at her. She's like, yeah. So Brooke, what is it? Since you're kind of on the outside of this, what is the one question that you wish? What information do you wish we would get from brides that you are like constantly needing the day of the wedding? What is the one thing that you go, I really wish this bride would?
I mean, just to be catty, like how difficult is your mother going to be or his mother going to be? I mean, when we go, because we are a really good team, the two of us, and Keith has more patience than I do. So I like for him to just go handle the bride and make sure that's going smoothly. I'll usually, after I go, do a lot of decor for the reception and all of that. And so then I'll jump back and like, I'll take care of the moms or whatever I need him, whatever he needs me to do, I do. But I prefer Keith's patience level to be with the bride. Do you remember the one that we did? Well, I don't want to horse and carriage. I don't want to, because if I say what.
Oh yes, horse and carriage. Yes, horse and carriage.
Remember, I collected all the ladies and sent them down. And I was with the bride, and thank God she forgot her vows. She went back in. The lady next door had come out, and that was something.
So let me catch everybody up on this story really quick, because that Brooke was upstairs getting the bride and the bridesmaids out of the room, and the lady that was next door to the bride's room, so not involved in the wedding at all, literally comes out screaming at Brooke about the fact that, now remember, this is 10 a.m. So we're not talking about
the bride's mom. And I sat
screaming at the bride and bride's mom about how loud they were being, and that she wasn't getting any sleep, and how dare she. And Brooke, you handled that actually kind of pretty good.
I mean,
considering.
I stood right in front of the bride. I said, "Do you guys get to the elevator?" And I just sat there, like, "What are you gonna?" I said, "Ma'am, honestly, they should have never put you here next to a bridal party, a bridal suite rather." And so I took the proper channeling and tried to get her moved. The best thing, do you remember this? At the very end, when we were packing up, we weren't done yet. We had about an hour left. And I went outside to have a cigarette, and I came back in, and I saw just the back of someone go into the elevator. I didn't know who it was. And then I slipped right in before the doors closed, and I turned around and looked, and it just so happened to be just me and that lovely lady next door in the elevator all alone. But she didn't.
I guarantee you,
she had none of that mouth.
I know, but she's sugarcoating this.
It was still great. That was my first brunch wedding experience.
Yeah, that was the first brunch wedding, but she's sugarcoating that. She was basically folding her arms, looking at the lady, going, "What you gonna do? What you gonna do?"
I'm trying. No one's here to save it.
Yeah, she was like, "Bring it, bring it." So Nichole, we've actually talked a little bit in the past episode about some of the things that you bring to the environment, and I actually wanted to touch a little bit more about custom builds, because you do custom builds like nobody else's business. And so, is there a past wedding or a past event that you look back on and you go, I really wish that I could redo or do that custom build again, just because it was so fabulous or so interesting?
I love it when our clients come to us and have a vision, and we get to help create it. And that's what's great about this job is you're always learning something new, getting a new experience. Every event is unique. They're not a cookie cutter of the previous one. Probably one of the more challenging things that we've had, well, we've done a couple, but ceiling treatments, always a bit of a challenge. I mean, we've had ones where people actually want us to put a jungle like on the ceiling for them, live foliage, and timing is a
That's
big
interesting.
yeah, well, believe me, because they had a truss structure over the dance floor, and they wanted greenery, jungle greenery across the entire dance floor. They wanted it to look like a jungle, and we had to figure out. You have to coordinate. There's a lot of different people involved in these events. So the lighting people who are putting up the trusses, what time were they going to get there? One thing I would say, what can go wrong will go wrong, and things almost always take longer than you think they're going to take. So plan for that. If you have a event planner, and hopefully your wedding planner, he handles all that stress for you, so you can just enjoy your day. But if you are doing it yourself, plan that people will be late. Plan that when one person is late, there's a chain effect that kind of goes downstream, so to speak.
Yep.
And even things that you think you've worked out all the contingencies on, there's still something that may happen. But I love to do ceiling treatments. I love to do unique things. But we did over a dance floor for a wedding. It was really, really beautiful. The bride wanted, it was like a woodland kind of fairy enchanted forest, but we didn't have a lot of time to put it together. And she wanted all live flowers too, wanted no faux flowers. So we literally had to hang these pieces from the ceiling. But again, we had to wait for other people to do their jobs before we could do our jobs. And then we just had to literally, the team just coming in and putting fresh flowers into the ceiling treatment over the dance floor. But it came out absolutely spectacular, and the pictures were beautiful. But it was some work. So a point would be is sometimes if a venue doesn't have an event the day prior, if it's not rented out, they may let you come in early, right? And so if you have an opportunity, if you're doing something special like an extensive ceiling treatment or whatever it may be, and if you get the opportunity, the venue isn't rented the day before, and the venue will let you come in, your vendors come in early to set up some of that stuff, that's great. It just allows some extra time. And always tell everybody at least an hour earlier than you actually want them there. That way. Right,
exactly.
That way.
And Erika, cute kitty.
She has to be here. She'll meow and she won't leave me alone.
I was like, I love our Zoom meetings because you never know what's going to happen behind us. I mean, normally I do like a little background. I was like, so done with that today. Well, with ceiling treatments, one of the things is that sometimes they don't check with the venue. Like the bride comes to you and she's like, oh no, it's all fine. And then you get there and they're like, oh no, you're not touching our ceiling.
Oh yeah, no, that's definitely something that goes into the work before we even do it, because every venue is different. Some venues only allow certain people to touch their ceilings. They have a specific in-house group, and we have to know, do they have a lift? Can we work from ladders? I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. That's a lot of the early on legwork. But even if you do all your homework, you get there the day of and there's something that could, or maybe would, or just prepare for everything. Right? Just be prepared. Right, just prepare
for everything. Well, that's one of the things I think it drives me crazy, and that maybe my panel can also chime in here, is that I feel like a lot of times brides don't do a great job if they don't have a planner. Let's say they don't have a planner, that they don't do a great job of communicating and giving each other your phone numbers or information so you can connect with each other. Because there are things that Nichole may be doing that Jacqueline's like, well, I'm already doing that. Why are we doing it twice? Or or like, especially timing. I mean, like, what's like the worst hotel in South Florida for as far as load in that you guys think of?
Oh, God. Anyone in South Beach?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. We're all thinking about the same one. Okay, good. Because I was like, I think I know which one everybody's talking about is the one in South Beach. Yeah.
Well, I think brides sometimes don't know. They pick a venue and they don't know to ask these questions. That's where, you know, working with having a planner, be like, if they're ordering special tables or they want special things, but the elevator or getting through a rabbit's maze of back of house to try to get things up to, oh, you've got this beautiful deck that's 10 stories up. I mean, it's a whole, the loading can be a whole other story, but it does, especially in South Beach with those hotels that are old and small and tight on space and
I get it. So Erika, so when it comes to timelines, like what is the worst expectations you've ever had about timelines? Like, you know, have you had a client that just like sent you like her list that you went, what? What? And then how did you respond to that to help them or help guide them to a proper timeline?
So before I actually do the wedding, I always discuss the timeline with my bride. So I actually never had like a super terrible story about the timelines like that. I do always recommend my brides like what time we should start, because in their mind they think they can get everything done within like 3 hours. And then they tell me they have 200 guests, they have 15 people in the bridal party, they have all their family members, they have an hour ceremony, then we have different locations, and I'm like, hold on, we have to explain to them, because a lot of them, they think they can be manageable with a very short amount of time, and when that does happen, you don't want to create chaos. I mean, there's definitely things that like you can't control. Like for instance, like we might have like a good 6 hours for a wedding, but the bride is running behind. She forgot something. The groom is running behind as well. Maybe the reception is not done, because that happened before. The cocktail hour finished and the tables weren't set up. There was a couple things missing. So my bride did actually cry. I actually remember. She was freaking out because the catering company was not ready. The food wasn't ready. But again, she tried doing everything herself, because she does event planning for like corporations, but she didn't think like weddings, there will be a different ball game. So obviously, like, you just have to make sure like, hey, it's going to be okay. The hardest part is done. Ceremony is done. We're married. That was the hardest part done. Now we just have to have fun and just kind of go with it and make sure we're having a good time. But definitely I always make sure that I know every detail. I actually send my brides a questionnaire too, to make sure like, all right, so what you were doing cutting at the cake, because there's things that with that timeline might not work for me. But so far, like, depending on the wedding too, if it's a smaller wedding, we can definitely work a smaller amount of hours. But if it's a bigger wedding, like with the 30 people of the bridal party, that was 8 hours, and that was not enough for them.
So I've actually had a bride's mom that ended up wanting to be like kind of center of attention. So she wanted to do a change of outfits. She wanted to take her photo and then have the photographer wait while she changed her outfit and then changed her hair for a new photo. And I was like, and if it hadn't been for the fact that Brooke and I were there, she probably would have gotten away with it. And that would have put everybody behind at least 20 minutes. And that's a lot of time when you're talking about a wedding day. You know, it's like, no, we got to keep moving. I appreciate the fact that you want to really look good, but you know, if you're looking for that,
that wasn't.
Well, I'm thinking glamour shots, honey. You need to go to glamour shots. Go to glamour shots.
Yeah, usually the moms, they think, they want to make sure everything's going okay, but they don't count like they're stressing out their, the bride or groom, because they have an idea of how they want the wedding to come out, but they're not seeing the vision of the bride and groom. Especially now, like I deal with mostly like younger couples too, so everybody's doing a little bit more creative weddings now. I had a wedding that there was no ceremony. They got married the day before, but then the next day they did first look, then family photos, cocktail hour, and party. So I'm sure.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I know like younger couples are changing how things are for the weddings. So, and they're not letting their parents influence them anymore. because I had couples that they do a lot of the weddings to please their parents. So they'll do the church ceremony, but they're not really, you know, they're not really religious, but they're doing
Churchy.
it for them. Yeah.
Yeah, that happens a lot, actually. I have to deal with that. And I'm sure Jacqueline can chime in on this, because parents always seem to have an opinion. And of course, they don't really make it known until it's time to write the check. And it's really funny to see that power play that happens with parents and their kids when it comes to decor.
I think that's a lot of reason too why it's like you got that struggle, like Erika just said, because you know they have their own ideas and how they would like to see things done, but then on the other hand, mom or someone's paying, so obviously because we've seen it, you know.
We've seen it.
Hard, you know, it's, unless you really get that cool set of parents that are like, hey, we'll pay for everything and you can do whatever you want. I haven't seen that yet. There's always going to be some there compromise, you know.
Yeah.
And actually, so we've had a meeting with Jacqueline where the parents were in there and they're like, well, we gave you a budget. This is your budget. And so, you know, Jacqueline was very politically correct, actually, when she went through that process.
No, I always, that's why it's always best to know what the budget is beforehand, so we know what we're working with. And that's much easier to kind of work around, but often it's like the color scheme, for example. I had a nice Jewish bride come in many, many years ago. Sorry, my dogs decided to bark. They're fixing the cable at the back of my house. And the bride had come in before without her mom, and she'd picked beautiful, bright colored flowers, almost looked like an Indian wedding. She wanted it really bright and cheerful. The mom comes in for the sample meeting and was like, what the bleep is that? I'm not paying for that. You're allowed white flowers, possibly a touch of blush, and everyone was screaming and crying because the mom was paying. In the end, the bride ended up with white and blush flowers. It was really sad.
Aww.
Really? So the parent actually pulled the money card and said, sorry, you're not getting your Indian wedding.
Yep. It doesn't happen. So part of my job is really figuring out, you know, getting in the bride's head, but also if the parents are super involved, is getting inside their head. And kind of, you know, you've got, you know, sometimes, you know, step parents super involved as well. So kind of meeting everybody who's a decision maker, having them at the initial meeting, which can make you want to drink sometimes, but you just get through it and you figure out and you go, okay.
Sometimes.
You really want it like rustic or gardeny, and you kind of got a modern edge. So how about we do a modern garden? So there's ways to kind of get around it, and it's really about your interpersonal skills half the time as well, rather than just the design aspect. Trying to make everybody happy, but it's hard. A lot of times, you know, the parents do think it's their day.
And it's difficult because, you know, a lot of times our business is about being psychologists. A lot of times, you know, we're the counselor, you know, that is listening to the parent, that's listening to, and it typically is like parents are divorced, both remarried, the stepmother who happens to be 15 years younger than the original, you know, that's when things get a little messy. You know, and you're trying to balance everybody's needs and wants all at the same time. And I think that really goes like Nichole. I'm sure you've had this happen to you, where, you know, you had a client that came in and then all of a sudden there were other parties trying to make their voices known.
Oh, well, yes. that does happen. Luckily, most of our things are in planning for quite a while, but it does absolutely happen where someone comes in and decides last minute that they don't like something, and we have to pivot and adjust. And no, that's not fun. That's my least favorite, I would have to say. But you know, but ultimately you want your clients happy. So that's you do what you have to do. But when you get the butting of heads over a similar idea, it's challenging.
Well, I think that goes back to Brooke. It's like when we first started this whole conversation, I asked her, like, you know, what's the one thing that you wish the bride would tell you? And it's about the personalities of the wedding party. I think, wouldn't that be nice if you had a nice, straightforward conversation about, like, you know, Uncle Timmy's a mean drunk, you know?
Listen, I always ask if I'm not involved in like the plan, up until the day of. I always ask Keith as soon as we meet up in the morning. I'm like, so what am I getting into? How, I always ask so that I set myself up, so I can be the most help to whoever it needs to be, whether it be Keith or whoever. We put out fires all day long. We really do. I've got our first wedding. Ooh, my first introduction to the very first time I worked for you. That was amazing.
With literally putting out fires. Yes, we literally were putting out. Yeah, so our first wedding together. Yes, our first wedding together. We were at the synagogue in South Beach, and the chef caught the dinner on fire, and the smoke alarms were going off, and Brooke convinced the bride's mom that it was part of the light show.
Because of that, there was no alarm, but all the lights were going off. So I was like, oh, it's just we're able to tie in all the lights around inside the venue to go kind of with the bass and the beats of the music. And they bought it. And I ran into the kitchen and there's
totally bought it.
That's a good save.
Yeah,
just everywhere.
I know, right? I was like, what a save. I was like, you told her what?
Poor Keith was
because. Oh my goodness! No, we were literally serving dinner. We were going in the back, plating dinners, taking it out, because that's what you do. You do literally anything that it takes to make things happen. So I'm gonna start wrapping this up. So I'm gonna ask each of you kind of like your worst case scenario of and it can be anything. It can be expectations versus reality. It can be take kind of one example of where you think that that if you just had an extra little bit of communication, or even if it was you put out a fire, something that says, look, if this can happen and it was a success, then this current state of affairs has nothing on you, right? This little virus is going to pass, because if we can make this kind of wedding happen, we can absolutely make your wedding happen. So I'll give you mine. So I'll start us off. I was doing an Indian wedding, and I think I've told the story a couple of times, but I had an Indian wedding where they wanted peacocks, right? And so if anybody's worked with birds or animals or anything in the past, they're wild animals for a reason. They're wild animals for a reason. Don't get them involved in your little wedding. So peacocks have a mating season, and during that time they fight, which I didn't know peacocks fought with each other, and they go with the color blue. They literally will attack anything with the color blue. And have you ever been to an Indian wedding? A lot of women wear blue. Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, so nothing like the wedding starting and then peacocks starting to chase ladies all over the place. So, obviously we we ran around gathering all these stupid peacocks and kind of got everything under control. And then luckily the Indian officiant made kind of light of it, talking about that the women look so beautiful that even the peacocks were chasing after them. And so everybody's like, oh, bing. So sometimes all it takes is just admitting it straight out and just making light of it as being just a part of a human component. So Jacqueline, what about you?
Oh gosh. I mean, I've got plenty of horror stories to tell, but I think the biggest thing I wish we kind of all discussed before is before the wedding day is a weather call, rain or wind call, because we've had some real disasters with it being called too late, or it's funny how it comes up in memories on Facebook. There was a wedding 8 years ago, and it just came up yesterday. I think it was the day before. I don't know. Every day blurs into one, and it came up, and it was at one of the Ritz-Carltons, and it was supposed to be outside, and it was 80% chance of rain, because I remember it came up, I posted, 80% chance of rain. I bet they still want to get married outside. So luckily we managed to pour it inside, but it didn't rain until they stepped on the glass and everyone shouted Mazel Tov. And then it poured. As the groom's about to walk down the aisle, he's like, it's still not raining. You guys screwed my wedding over and all this stuff. And luckily, as soon as he broke the glass, it poured. But I wish people just kind of discussed the rain call beforehand and the weather call. For wind too, we are in a tropical climate, and the wind, and we've had people faint from the heat and stuff like that. So it's you still want your guests to be comfortable. And I think if we all discuss those things beforehand, I think that would be really awesome, so that we don't have arches falling over, guests fainting. We did have a wedding once. It was in Delray, and it didn't look like it was going to rain, because you can't always tell. But we set up the chuppah outside. It poured with rain. We had to pull it inside, and this is the reason I changed my contract. So we will only set up the ceremony once. Everything was soaking wet. It was a fabric chuppah. We don't bring spare fabric. We bring spare everything else. Right. Breakable fabric. What do you need that for? I managed to drag all the tablecloths off of other tables that they had in a back room, because it was a private club, and I made a chuppah, because I still had the metal frame, with all these tablecloths, and somehow this wedding still got published. And I'm like, after that, I was like, you know what? We have to stick to a rain call. We have to do what's best. Luckily, we made it work. But it's not fair on all of your vendors having to make it, and the fact that the wedding got published, honest to God, I have no freaking clue how it got published.
So wait, let me get this straight. It rained on the original chuppah. You rebuilt the chuppah using hotel linen.
Hotel linen, standard hotel linen. So there were just the square ones, because it was like a country club, but they had like the overlays. And I don't know how the bejesus I managed to make this thing happen. But it looked pretty, but it was like so stressful on everybody. If they just made the rain call when they should have made the rain call, this wouldn't have happened, because they didn't have time to move all the furniture out. So it was a real hodgepodge of different couches and stuff like that, which can look really cool if it's intentional, like when we do weddings with Nichole. But this was kind of like a real beachy, classy wedding with all these different elements. So she was married. I always say, I got married in a parking lot in the end, personally, because of what happened at my wedding. That, as long as you're married at the end of it, it's about your marriage and not the wedding. And that's what people need to take into consideration as well.
I agree 100%. And I tell people that all the time. I'm like, it's not about, you're here with your friends and family. It's about the joy and love between your friends and family. Stuff happens.
Yeah.
Asterisk hashtag happens. You know what I mean? It's like, let it go. Just realize that human beings are messy. We're messy people, and
it's something
stupid things get
kids. It's something you can tell your
kids.
I mean, so you've got to look at it as, this is what life is about. Bleep happens.
Yeah, because you may not laugh about it now, but you will later.
Oh, yeah. There's me on my wedding video with like apple martinis going, how does it feel to be married? And I'm like, I got married in a parking lot, but I don't care. I'm married. Like, that's all I cared about. And, a car backfired in the middle of our ceremony. I'm like, I'm getting married. I don't care. Let's just get this done. And it was an amazing day. So that's what people
classy. How about you, Erika? Tell us a little bit. Yeah?
I actually remember I did have a bad incident with a couple. They wanted to get eloped in Vizcaya, but as you know, they charge for the grounds. Mm-hmm. So we all go to the back of the venue, but I guess they changed the security now. They're keeping tabs on like whoever's taking photos now. So she goes in there, they're not letting her in with a bouquet. So we're like, all right, fine, we can deal without the bouquet. Then we go in the back, we get the ceremony, she pays for me so we can use the grounds, and mid-ceremony, security comes and stops the wedding completely. They tell us, you can't do that, you have to go through the right sources, and they told them it's gonna cost you about $2,000 to get married here, just to use their grounds. So she's on TV, she's crying, yes, she's crying. They have their grandpa, which he was like 85 years old man. So they made him walk from the back all the way to the front to the entrance to pay the fee, which they were in a budget wedding on top of that. But we were like 5 minutes into the ceremony and they stopped it completely. Security wouldn't let us do anything. I'm telling security, like, please let us just finish. Like, we'll pay the fee. We have to leave in the front anyway. You can wait for us. It's like, we're not gonna let you guys get married here. So it was a mess. And on top of that, she was pregnant. So the stress was just so bad for her. So after that, I always tell my couples, before you do any elopements or anything, make sure you know the venue. If they're gonna charge you for grounds, or they're gonna charge you extra money, if it is for me or for anybody else. So after a while, obviously we got better. She got married, but it ended up being like $2,500 just to use an hour of their grounds in Vizcaya. So a lot of my couples, they like to do engagement sessions in, Vizcaya or the Spanish monastery, but they do charge. So I let them know, hey, we can go in there, but I don't want to get kicked out, or you're gonna get you're gonna charge us like $300 just to use the grounds. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing I learned to always tell my couples, like, hey, do your research before before you get married. If this venue or this place, like, it's gonna be okay with doing anything you want. Like,
oh my God, so important.
The flowers and what you guys were trying to do with the ceiling, with the doing the jungle thing, even in some places they don't allow you to. Like, that's something very important that couples need to find out first, because there's so many regulations and rules. So when the day comes, guess what? You can't do that. So it's
oh my God, that just kills me. And how many people were in the wedding party when you say, because you talked about?
It was like about 5 people. The bride and groom.
5 people.
Yeah, that's it. The grandparents.
So they wanted $2,500 for 5 people to do a quick, simple ceremony, meaning the couple people, the efficient.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, we love the Vizcaya.
So be
Look, as I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, what bothered me the most is that they took the elders, the grandpa was like 89 with a cane, and he took like 20 minutes just to get to the front. Like, they could have just,
So they made him charge. They charged him anyway. So even
they charged them.
Wow.
But they could have took anybody else, but they took the really, the grandpa that couldn't barely walk. So they were upset.
Oh my God.
Because, he could barely walk. But they had to do the ceremony. So
that's why you say, do your research. Don't assume. I mean, there are some times that you can ask for forgiveness. Like, we just recently did a wedding at the Pelican Grand, and they wanted one of those balloon releases at the end, one of those Chinese lanterns, and it was gorgeous. But we were like, 30 minutes into it, and the police officer
was it though?
Police officer came in, almost arrested me. So it's like, whoops. So sometimes I'm a big fan of ask for forgiveness versus permission. Those are probably one of the moments that maybe I should have asked for permission, but How about you, Nichole? What's up?
Oh gosh. I'd say just, again, planning ahead as much as possible is key. If you're doing it yourself, one thing, people, make sure you order extras. And this kind of goes a little bit with what Jacqueline said. I came in and did an event. It was kind of last minute. They brought me in to help kind of manage things. Everything else had been set up. So I was just there to manage. And it was a beautiful mansion on the Intercoastal in Boca tent, but it can get gusty, like Jacqueline said, it's a tropical, and they had these tall glass centerpieces with the flowers on top, and a gust of wind came through, knocked over centerpieces, smashed centerpieces everywhere. And they had, just the regular 72-inch round tables with linen, but they had no extras of anything. So they had no extra glassware, they had no extra napkins, they had no extra tablecloths. And so we literally had to, all of these arrangements that had fallen over and glassware that had smashed, we had to unset all of the tables, but there was no extra linens. So I had to go into the house, into this mansion, and put the linens in their dryer to dry them so we could reset the table. And the owner, the client says,
awesome.
Can't we just do it without? And I'm like, you want to look at this? Because no, you can't do it without. And they own not a single, they had the super modern house and they did not own a single tablecloth. So dinner was like an hour late because, and I was like, oh my God. So if you're doing it yourself, again, think ahead, be prepared.
We had an event.
That's funny.
Oh, it was the worst. And it was like, the thing is, I didn't have anything to do with it. I was just managing it. But, you know, shit rolls downhill. So,
But you know what? I don't know if I would have thought of that. I don't know if I would have said, oh, let's check inside this big, beautiful house to see if they'll let us use their dryer.
oh man,
See,
I didn't know
like,
what else to do, man. I was full on panic attack. I mean, this was not, well, the good news is they were converted into a regular client, and I've done all of their events since then. So, but I'm playing the whole thing through and through. It was an easy conversion after that, but yeah, it was not fun.
Oh my gosh.
But then I had,
oh my gosh.
You had to talk me off a ledge about an event not too long ago.
Yeah, well, and you say I had to talk you off a ledge. I don't really feel like I had to talk you off a ledge, but yeah. So what she's talking about, guys, is that she had to have these huge, what were they, like 8 feet by 4 feet panels
no,
that had to be printed.
Yeah, they were 8 by 8 panels that was different time frames of pictures, you know, and we printed them on fabric and we had them mounted. And it was kind of a lot.
So they're 8 feet by 8 feet.
And it was very last minute that they wanted, but so we rushed the job to get it done. We went to go, the event had to be set up by 5 p.m. that day. The printers didn't have, because it was last minute, didn't have them ready to go until noon. So we literally had to grab them from the printers and mount them on these frames so they could be put up. And it was pretty much the main decor for this.
I remember that, Keith. We were together actually doing something. I actually remember this now. I remember this.
Well, yeah. So the problem is that they had only used one image on all the frames instead of the 8 different images.
So instead of printing 5 different images, they reprinted one image 5 times, even though we had proofed them all and gave the go ahead with the 5 different images. But I didn't think to check them like at the printer. And then we were actually taking them and mounting them, but we got done at like 5. The printer rushed and printed new ones for us, and we were there with compressors and air guns and putting these things up and putting it together. It's like done at 5 minutes to 5, and I was having a total panic attack. It got
yeah, we were talking about like how to like, you know, create more time and what we do in order to, you know, do you extend the cocktail hour an extra half hour? Is there something that we could do? So we were coming up with plan B and C while she was working on plan A, which of course, thank goodness, worked out. But that was, you were a little intense, but I just knew your people were going to be able to get it done. So Brooke, I'm going to wrap this up with you, sweetie pie.
I'm sorry if you can hear that awful noise. They're pruning outside my window. Well, there's actually
welcome to home Zoom meeting. So
there's 3 that come to mind. I'll let you choose. There's Coco Chanel.
Yeah.
We probably should leave that one alone. Or is that
probably.
We don't have time. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the one that through a friend of ours that we heard about, and then I'm going to let you, and I'll have you briefly do the other one. What do you do when the bride starts her period 2 seconds before she walks down the aisle?
Oh gosh, I totally forgot. Oh, I totally forgot about this story. Oh my god. Oh my god. Of course you brought this up.
Well, you wanted the dirt. I mean, it's not dirt, but I mean, this is the stuff, like, let's talk about it. This is like the horror story that can happen if you're a bride right before you walk down the aisle. Luckily.
Oh my god.
So what do? You go in with a pair of scissors, cut the inside panel out, send her down the aisle. But it was all cut out. But,
oh gosh, yeah. The things that we do.
Tell a little bit about the what do you do when excuse me, when the groom hits it. The groom hits it. I was like, yeah, psych, I'm not doing it. When the let's see. Now, these are the things that actually do happen. It's not just the scene on TV.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So
this is the kind of stuff. Oh look, we're
Bloody Mary and the
time.
Wait, did somebody
we're almost out of time. So we've had a couple of events where the groom at the end of the rehearsal dinner, in 200 guests, huge thing, everything was perfect. He stands up with the microphone, says, I want to just thank everybody for coming, and the wedding is off, and walks out. Yeah, so that was one. And then we had a Coco Chanel wedding where the bride and groom were taking part of substances that we would have normally not said to take part of. I think I'm saying that in a very politically correct way. And they ended up kissing at their ceremony and rolling around in the sand, like very awkwardly. And people started like inching away.
Well, that was kind of the fact that when they came inside and they took the children into the family stall with them. That's the problem.
Okay.
See,
All right. I think that's
wedding. I would have put
Are we?
I think that is a great place to wrap this up. So thank you guys so much for being part of Behind the Veil. I hope you guys had a good time. I know I had a good time. We do this every Tuesday at 2 o'clock. If you have friends or family, again, I'm going to be converting this over to video. It'll be available on YouTube and through Facebook, and then I'll tag each of you guys and put some hashtags in here about what we discussed. But again, thank you guys so much, and keep healthy, keep safe, stay indoors or stay away from people 6 feet. Yeah.
And it was nice to see all you ladies that I haven't seen in forever.
Hi, Brooke.
Miss you all. Hopefully we'll see each other again soon without seeing, but at least we have this, you know what I'm saying? So it was great to see everyone.
Right? At least we have this. Thank you guys. Have a great day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.